Right now it's time for that time when we talk to our special guest. Tonight our special guest is once again Cameron Slater. Cameron last appeared on The Beat Goes On mid-July, pre-Jacinda Ardern. Nothing was happening. Then all hell broke loose. This time Cameron has something to get his teeth into. Cameron Slater, welcome to The Beat Goes On in this very high-powered political time.
How are you, Jared?
Very good. Way back in July, Cameron, I asked you on the show, and it was all plain sailing. National were going to plain sail, and then suddenly all hell broke loose in the Labour Party, and we saw Andrew disappear. Everything changed. The week after you left the studio, it was all changed. So we haven't been fair to you, Cam, so we want to hear your results of the election.
Oh, everything I said back then was valid for back then, but what we saw after that was the Labour Party organise a hit job on Materia Ture over her fraud. That was designed to peel away the soft Labour voters that had gone to the Greens under the leadership of Andrew Little. And then the second part of that was to bring in Jacinda Ardern to haul them back off the Green Party. They also managed to pull back a whole lot of, about half of Winston Peters' vote as well, that were soft Labour voters that didn't support Andrew Little.
Now, suspicious, so perfect for the Labour Party, wasn't it? So you would have thought it was planned.
It was planned.
Do you?
Absolutely, it was planned. These things don't happen for no reason.
But Materia wouldn't sacrifice her political career for that, would she? Or?
Who was her partner at the time that this happened? It was Anne Hartley's son. Anne Hartley was a former Labour MP and a high-powered real estate person. She bought the houses. So there was no poverty, there was no story of poverty, there was no struggling to feed my child nonsense. And so she knew what the true story was, and that got fed into the Labour Party and it got leaked to the media. It's as simple as that.
Well, look, I haven't heard that theory, that this was a planned operation.
Absolutely, it was planned. And then it was planned as well to replace Andrew Little with Jacinda Ardern. They just needed two bad polls in a row to make that happen, and they got it. So that was all planned. But the reality is Jacinda Ardern...
Well, it worked perfectly, didn't it?
Well, it didn't work perfectly because Jacinda Ardern only managed to get up to the same amount of support that David Shearer had 2 elections ago.
Wow.
So, they got 35% odd. That's where David Shearer was when David Cunliffe rolled Shearer because his vote wasn't high enough. Of course, Cunliffe took Labour to 25%. So all they've done with Jacinda is get them back to where they are. But the reality is Jacinda Ardern went from number 2 to number 1, and number 1 went from number 1 to number 3. The policies and all the lunatic stuff that they've got with taxes here and taxes there, that's all still the same. It's the same Labour Party. It's just got a smiley face and a few extra teeth now. But the reality is that she's considered within the Labour Party to be a flake. The senior people there knew that she could, run a short campaign as long as she didn't have to answer too many questions. She's really, really good at remembering bumper sticker socialist slogans, and she delivers those. But if you start analysing her facial expressions, her micro expressions, she just doesn't believe a word that she's saying. And then when you have a look at the words that she uses, things like, let's have a conversation about that. I think we need to have a conversation about, none of it's action words. It's all about having some jibber-jabber and some chat over a coffee. The reality is she is a flake, and there's a real fear within the Labour Party that she's going to tip over inside 6 months as soon as she has to start making hard decisions.
Gosh, as an outsider, Cam, you're an expert at this. You're a political analyst or commentator. To me, just watching the television, it looks like she's done a wonderful job, and this is a success story. So you're showing us a different side of the story.
Look, I had lunch with her in 2008, and it was 3.5 hours of the most teeth-pulling, mind-numbing boringness. It was nothing but a socialist slogan after socialist slogan about how we need to be a workers' paradise and all of that sort of stuff. It was very convivial, very amiable. Look, she's lovely to get on with and have a drink with or things like that. But being Prime Minister requires you to make decisions that by necessity are going to annoy some people. If she thinks you can go through life in politics thinking it's all motherhood and apple pie, it's just not going to wash. People talk about her being a policy wonk. Well, that was exposed absolutely in the election campaign with the discussions on tax. It was clear that she hadn't done her research on that. It was clear that Grant Robertson had been utter lazy bum and had not done any of the numbers himself, Labor's numbers just simply didn't stack up, and that's why Stephen Joyce was able to drive an absolute truck through their claims. And even though the media and everyone else claimed that they were false, there was enough of a hole there for people to start wondering, and that's why their support didn't grow and grow and grow. It just petered out at 35%. And that's why we've got Winston Peters sitting there in the kingmaker position. And that's not going to change with the special votes either. He's still going to be the kingmaker. It all depends on how big a majority he wants. If the Greens get an extra seat, then you're looking at a Labour New Zealand First Green coalition that's got 62 seats out of the 120. It's only a margin of 2. All it takes is one Fruit Loop to go troppo, and the government's at risk. And we saw that a by-election can nobble a 2-seat majority as well. That's what happened to National in the last term of Parliament. If National loses a seat, they've still got, with Winston Peters, 6-seat majority, which is far more stable. And that's the thing that Winston wants. He wants stability of government, and he doesn't want the Greens anywhere remotely near a job. Now, they can't get over the line on the left unless they include the Greens. So the Greens are going to get bent over a table and done rather roughly, like Helen Clark did to them.
So I haven't been watching that closely, but what has Winston got against the Greens?
The same thing almost everybody. I mean, they've only got 6% of the vote. 94% of New Zealanders think that they're lunatics. And that's what Winston's belief is. You can't trust them. Look what they did with the MOU. They signed the MOU and then proceeded to go around poaching Labour's vote the whole time. The Materia Ture hit was retribution for that, and it cut their vote in half. Now the Greens are an also-ran, not as bad as the ACT Party, but they are an also-ran. They've got literally no power, no negotiating power at all.
Jim Bulger's going around saying that the Greens should consider approaching National and saying, why don't we do something?
Well, Jim Bulger's one of the reasons why I'll never support a republic, right? Because my position on that is I'll start supporting a republic when 2 people in politics are dead, Jim Bulger and Helen Clark. They've both been trying to push us down the route to a republic, and no doubt some person who, if brains were dynamite, they wouldn't have enough to blow their nose, would suggest that Helen Clark or Jim Bulger should be our first president. Well, I don't want that. Look, the Greens, if they were smart, and they're not, demonstrably not, would be talking to National to increase their leverage over the Labour Party and over New Zealand First. They've categorically ruled out talking to National, which is a shame really, but that's the Greens. I did an analysis on my website of where the Greens get their votes. The vast majority of their votes are garnered from National Party controlled electorates, either on the party vote, where National won the party vote, or where they won the seat and the party vote. That tells me that a whole lot of Green voters are actually the wives of National voting business people. So you've got the party and its members are activists, hardcore socialists, most are communists. And then the people who vote for them, who don't realise that they're communists and socialists, who think that the green veneer on the outside is what they're all about, have been hoodwinked repeatedly by the Green Party into thinking that they're an environmental party. We know they're not an environmental party, because if they were, the environment would come first. It would be their priority, and they would therefore be sitting and talking to the National Party about softening up their environmental policies. And they haven't done that. They've ruled it out categorically, so that just tells you the environment's not a priority for the Green Party.
So what you're saying is that they've always gone ideology as opposed to practical answers to the environment?
No, not necessarily ideology. Their ideology is socialist and communist.
That's right. They've always leaned left.
But they've put a veneer over the top. That's why they're called watermelons. They're green on the outside and they're dark red on the inside.
This coming, I think it's the 12th, Winston has said, I'll make a decision, so it's this week sometime. Where do you think Winston's going to go?
If the Labour Party will throw everything in the kitchen sink at trying to get him across the line. They've been out of power for 9 years now. They really think that they should be in power. And if that means shanking the Greens hard, then they'll do that. But it's a matter of whether Winston wants to have some sort of arrangement like that. Frankly, I think that's very unstable, and Winston values stability over anything else. with the National Party, if they pick up a seat, then his power diminishes significantly. And then you're likely to see Winston Peters sit on the crossbenches and make Bill English beg for every single piece of legislation. If the Nats were smart, they'd give everything that Winston wants, bring him into the coalition, because once he's bought, he stays bought.
A bought man.
He is. He always has been.
Okay, so
he's reliable.
what does Winston, will he want the Deputy Prime Ministership, do you think? Or?
Who knows what Winston wants, but if I was the National Party, I'd give it to them. Otherwise, you're going to have a bunch of pinkos and nutters that are running the country.
Now, of course, the whole apple cart was upset by the loss of the 2 Maori seats. Did you see that coming?
No, no one did, really. Maori TV ran a poll that said that Te Uro Flavel, who by all accounts is a pretty good guy, was going to hose in and win that seat. He had 61% support in the poll. Now, you have to acknowledge that Maori seat polling is actually quite difficult. So a lot of people who say they live in the Maori electorate but aren't actually on the Maori roll. I don't believe that Tamati Coffey did a fantastic job to unseat him. I think what you've seen is Maori, rather stupidly, not using the MMP system to benefit themselves. And they've bought the hoo-ha from the Labour Party that has returned all those seats to the Labour Party. Now, they took advantage of them for 90-odd years, have delivered very little for Maori in all that time. The Maori Party went and did something bold. They went into coalition with the National Party. People called them traitors and everything, but the reality is that Te Uro Flavel and Tariana Turia and Peter Sharples were able to influence and control something like $400 million worth of annual spending for nearly 9 years. Over $4 billion of spending that was targeted specifically at Maori initiatives, policy initiatives. They made huge advances into the funding of mental health initiatives for young Maori. There's many, many things that they've achieved that they could never have achieved being in opposition. And that's a key lesson for people like the Greens, that you can do nothing if you're spitting from the outside. But if you're on the inside spitting out, then you can achieve an awful lot more.
But the big elephant in the room is, why didn't the Maori people see that the Maori Party had done something great for the Maori people?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I said to National back in the 90s, and in fact I know one minister back then, Morris Williamson. He's no longer in government, so I can say this now. He actually worked out a spreadsheet to work out the exact dollar amount that National had to spend to make sure they got no votes from Maori. Because in the 90s, of course, they started the settlement process. And Doug Graham was spending billions of dollars on settlement, and every time they got a settlement, their vote went down. It became so bad, the National Party now no longer stands candidates in Maori seats at all. It's not worth the time, effort or money to do it. National got no thanks for starting those treaty settlements, for finalising a vast number of them in the time they were in power, and they've got no thanks for continuing that. And there's really only one left now, which is Ngāpuhi, and there's too much inbreeding up them to get anybody up there, to get anybody to have a rational argument over whether or not they should settle or not.
Now, one of the, I thought was, I'm trying to think of, is it strange, but it was amazing that the Maori king from Tainui would recommend that all his subjects vote the Maori Party, and the Maori Party disappeared. So the power of the Maori king was a bit suspect there, wasn't it?
No one listens to the truck driver from Huntly.
I'm a Huntly boy.
Well, that's where he's from, and he drove trucks. I think you just saw a lot of people looked at the Maori Party, they looked at some of the settlement processes and things like that and thought, oh, well, the hierarchy are getting it, we're not, so they voted for Labour. Maori is stupid. I mean, they're the only group of voters in New Zealand that have got these special seats where they could have literally Maori-manded the result. If they'd all voted for the Maori Party candidates, they'd have Maori Party candidates as electorate MPs, and party voted to the Labour Party. Yeah. Instead, they did 2 ticks Labour. They've got Labour MPs and they've got Labour, increased Labour vote, but that's it.
And they could have had double the number of Maori representing them, which would have been great.
Exactly, but the time for the Maori seats has passed. There's more Maori in Parliament outside of the Maori seats than in the Maori seats.
Now, Cam, we've run out of time. Wonderful to have you back, and
No
this
problem.
gave you a really good chance because the last time you were on the show, as you remember, way back in July, none of this has happened. But none of this is going to put you off politics, is it?
Well,
Cam?
no, that's the greatest game on earth. It's always different, and things like that can happen. And a week is a long time in politics, and we'll soon know in a week's time whether we've got a government or not.
What's going to be the big story with the blog this week, Whale Oil?
Don't know. I haven't decided who to shoot down in flames yet.
Cam, it's
No
always
problem.
good to see you. You always come in with a refreshing and a different point of view on New Zealand politics.
Oh, you've got to laugh, don't you?
You have to laugh. Thank you.